So, hi everyone. My name is Farnia Fernell. And so together, we're here to deliver a refreshing and insightful just-in-time workday session to set you up for greater productivity. These are meant to be snack size learnings. Like I know a lot of people on the East Coast, at least, who may be having lunch in the moment. So again, feel free to drop in the chat, and I will periodically open the chat to see what is said there. I see Chicago, I see New York, I see Toronto. Wow, we've got a very nice spread of everyone here on the call. So just for those that don't know me, my name is Farnia Fernell, and my career trajectory has been filled with incredible friendships that might be considered alliances. These friendships served as such a great source of encouragement and sometimes opportunity for me over the course of my career. For those, again, that don't know me, after years as a Fortune 100 global leader in financial services and in consulting, I realized there was a gap in my understanding. I'm a first-gen systems engineer trained in business and trained in process and trained in technology. Yet my difference in culture actually felt like it was a limiting factor for me for most of my career. I used what I knew and I learned what I didn't know, which included elements of psychology, neuroscience, coaching. I launched the the-lenserf-group, and that was just about 12 years ago. So 12 years later, we've coached, trained, and consulted with thousands of leaders across more than 44 countries to what we call exceed your potential, which is not just reaching your potential, but really seeing untapped potential. So exceed your potential. And in that time, over these past 12 years, I've seen patterns in folks who are high performing. And I call these patterns the 4 pillars that keep people in this state of high performance over time. And I call these pillars COGS. So you guys may have seen this session called Leadership COGS or Leadership Tips if you came in through Better Spaces. But COGS actually stands for this. Each one of these letters stands for something, and the C is for celebrating consistency. So leaders that perform very high, they're able to celebrate consistently and consistency, which is a key attribute of high performance, doing things over and over, even when it's tough, and celebrating along the way. The O is for ownership. Ownership not only of yourself, but also of your actions. Like that ownership is, some people call it accountability, but ownership is not just the being, it's also the actions as well. So what you do and what you do not do. The G is for growing out of the glue. So we all get stuck, right? Things get difficult sometimes and we all get stuck. And that's okay, because that stuckness is meant, it's usually when we're leveling up to something that we've never encountered before. So the G is for that, growing out of that glue. And the S is the stamina to stretch. If any one of you right now were just to reach out your arms, you might feel a little bit of a pull. And if you're to hold your arms there long enough, you'll realize you're tired. And the S is the stamina to stretch into what's next in spite of that discomfort. Okay? Because we all face a little bit of discomfort when we're doing something new. So our focus today is the C, which is celebrating consistency, and the O for ownership. We're talking building alliances, okay? And when I initially thought about this topic, I wondered, people might be joining thinking, yeah, alliances, friendships, or people know how to make friends. And what else is there really to add here? But I know there's a lot to add here the more I thought about this, because we're talking professional alliances, which don't necessarily feel the same as friendships all the time. And what is a professional alliance? Well, it's a purposeful relationship between two people, you can call two people or organizations or whatever, with the intention to collaborate and support one another's goals, one another's growth, or one another's success. And alliances tend to be focused on mutual benefit. So it's not all one, you could have a friend for life and you may always do stuff for your friend. But that may not be considered an alliance because maybe you always do something for your friend, but your friend doesn't reciprocate. And that's okay because that's the nature of the friendship that you have. That's okay. In a professional alliance, there's something different. It's focused on mutual benefit and shared respect and long-term value. So it's not just for right now, it's for the long term. So it's looking almost from a macro view. At TLG over the course of 12 years, I've been able to forge a lot of these professional alliances. In fact, that's kind of become the core of our business model. So each year, one of the metrics that we actually measure and one of the metrics that we evaluate is how many opportunities have we actually shared with other small businesses? And how many partners have we looked at new opportunities with? And when we considered that, it was amazing to see that in the past, some of these alliances allowed us to support other businesses in winning hundreds of thousands of dollars in new business opportunities with governments and private entities. And that's simply because we're not looking at the short term, like you're giving away business. No, we're looking at winning together. So alliances can be with referral partners who share new business opportunities with you and you with them, because there's some reciprocity there, right? Alliances can be with mentors or mentees who mutually learn from one another. And this is particularly helpful when we think about the huge generational divide that currently exists in the workplace. We've got so many generations working at the same time. And if you know anyone that is in Gen Alpha, they might say something like, yeah, what's the skibbity? Or what are these other terms that don't sound like they make sense? But alliances with people that are in Gen Alpha, I don't know about you, but I've got some Gen Alphas in my world. And when I hear words like skibbity, I was like, I actually thought it was a joke or that one person was just saying that, but that is actually a generational thing. And learning that terminology and understanding those things can only exist if I have relationships, if I form alliances with those who are different in a different generation. That can open up a lot for you, depending on what business you happen to be in and what your responsibilities are. So I have a question. I got a lot of people here on the line. I'm excited about that. What alliances do you currently have in your professional world? Just drop that in the chat. I'd love to see what alliances might exist in your professional world. And if you can't think of any, that's okay too, because you're here. So you have an opportunity to think about what alliances you might want to be in your professional world. You set aside this time, we're going to dig right in. So relationships, let's think about what's important about alliances. So alliances are built on trust, transparency, reciprocity, and alignment. So if you were to see your relationships like currency, you might actually notice that you can't get currency without earning it. So this is a professional workday session, right? So you're probably working in the rest of your day. And if you don't work, chances are you don't get currency or you don't get paid for that work. So if we treat relationships like currency and alliances like currency, we'll know that you can't withdraw from a bank if you never made a deposit, right? So what's important about alliances is that. So you build strong relationships and you can exert and influence and get the support that you need or activate that support. Because again, alliance is about reciprocity only if you've made deposits in that alliance, only if you've invested in those alliances. So I'll ask another question here. I saw in the chat, alliances with other consulting firms with complementary skills. Absolutely. Alliances with firms that are doing complementary work. So should your work extend beyond your capability, you can extend an offer to another company to support them, or they can support you. So I'll come back to that question. Who have you invested in lately without a need for anything in return? You don't have to answer that out loud, but I encourage you, just jot it down. Who have you invested in lately without a need for anything in return? That might be a friend, that might be family. And invert that question a little bit, because we said alliance is about reciprocity. Where have you not asked someone who might be considered an ally for support that you might need in something you're doing? So a lot of us do. We invest in relationships, we invest, but it might look one-sided, but it might actually be an opportunity to be in alliance with someone or some entity, but we're not quite hitting that go button on asking for that reciprocity. Hopefully this is making sense for all of you. Yeah? Okay, let's keep going. So the second thing in alliance is alignment beats agreement. Alignment beats agreement. So build alliances with those who agree, right? You want to be around people who, you generally share values, you share things with. But it's also important to be around those who disagree. Alliances aren't only about agreement on things, meaning people who look exactly like you, who do exactly what you do, that's all nice. But there's an element of difference that it is important. Sometimes it's easier just to pick a yes person. Oh, I have an alliance with this person. Everything I say, they say yes to. However, depending on the kind of alliance you're looking for, you may not, that might not serve you. It's difficult to see blind spots or difficult to find opportunities that are complementary if there's only agreement. It's also more difficult to learn how to deal with resistance or difference if your alliances don't actually have elements of difference in them. Like, oh, we could do that and our partner could do that. Okay, well, what is the delineating factor? Why would someone choose you rather than your partner? What is the difference there? So it's helpful when thinking about building alliances to build alliances with those that are different, that might have access to fill blind spots that you may not have. So I think about a time I had a critical meeting, and we were going to go live with a very large project. And before going live, we called like this go, no go meeting where all the key stakeholders were supposed to be in the room and decide, were we going forward or not? And I thought I knew everybody that was supposed to be at that meeting, but I didn't ask. I didn't ask the stakeholders I knew if there had been somebody missing. And lo and behold, we were kicking off the meeting and someone said, oh, where is what his name was? And sure enough, I was like, oh, I spoke to him this morning. They're like, well, he should be here. And it never struck me that that person should have been in that room. I spoke to them, so I thought I did the due diligence. The rest of the room felt like that person was necessary in the room. So when you have alliances, had I taken a step and just said, hey, do you know, like, this is the list. Should anyone else be there? Had I taken that one step before that meeting, we wouldn't have been in that situation where someone was asking, hey, is this person missing? Or is their perspective missing? So that's a way, activate alliances. Who's missing from your view, your perspective right now with something that you're working on? Who might be missing? And if you don't know, it's okay. Who can you ask? That is what an alliance can do. It can give you a safe space to ask an uncomfortable question. Let's move right along. Number 3. So consistency. I said that we are celebrating consistency today as we talk about alliances. And I'll keep this pretty simple here. Consistency builds credibility. That might be obvious. So very simply, be who you are consistently. So when you're working to build alliances, which are slightly different, again, I'll come back to that, slightly different than friendships, right? When you're working to build alliances, be who you are consistently. This is not unlike friendships. Be who you are consistently. Follow through, show up, because people align with leaders that they count on. So if an alliance, remember there's reciprocity in alliance. So if you're not showing up and pulling the weight of that relationship because there's reciprocity that's expected, that alliance won't exist for much longer. If I can't trust you, if I can't rely on you for the one tiny thing that I think I can rely on you for, then that kind of shatters the alliance. So I'll ask this question. How can you show up in ways that reinforced trust? Think about one relationship, one alliance that you might have. And I encourage you to answer that question. How can you show up in ways that reinforce trust? Let's take a second. Well, I'm kind of spewing these questions, but we are going with lunchtime snack size bits. All right, so we're going to move to stakeholders. I said this word before. Wait, I think I saw somebody put something in the chat. Yeah, asking more questions. That asking more questions can help you show up. Absolutely. So our 4th point here is about stakeholders. So what is a stakeholder? A stakeholder is anyone who has an interest in or is affected by a project, a decision, an organization. They either influence or they are influenced by whatever activity happens to be going on. It's a very broad definition there, but they are affected by something that you're doing in some material way. Next part of stakeholders is stakeholders are strategic relationships. And I say this in this way because when we think about building alliances, and then want to apply that to a work setting, if you're working on anything, a project, something very small, it doesn't have to be complex. Have you considered the network of people that are affected by your work? And if you haven't, I'm sharing something with you today that might help. A lot of what we cover in COGS assumes that you are already working on a goal. So you showed up here today. I'm so happy to see you. But think about for a moment, what is a goal that you're working on? That we can begin to kind of put this stuff in context for you through the lens that we can put it through. And which alliances might you want to activate more intentionally? I shared on the screen here a couple of different stakeholder relationships. I see in the chat, I see, how about political alliance? Absolutely, yeah. Political, this happens in any setting, including politics, especially including politics. You know, when in political situations, when it looks like it's 50-50, you want an ally on the other side that might swing the other way. It's very, very real. So on the screen, what I've shared is a sample stakeholder map with lots of different categories that might help you to think about what alliances you might want in your world. So I'll talk through this briefly. Clients, and if you're in nonprofit, that might look like donors, or if you're in a political setting, that might look like donors, right? Or constituents, if you're in a political setting. So clients, donors, constituents, the industry itself dictates something. There might be advocates, there might be those who are supporting the industry in some tangential way. Depending on how your company is owned, it might be venture capital. It might be lots of different ownership structures, but consider who those stakeholders are. Are there prospects? We're talking external, but are there prospects that may be involved in your world? So not yet clients or not yet people you're working with, but people you might want to work with. But consider some of these categories and add your own if they're missing. So external, that is on the left side of this page in gray, external stakeholders. And then let's start to move along. The board kind of sits on both sides, where most board members kind of have a foot outside the company, but they serve as an objective, non-objective party. They have some internal, external views, right? So that's right in the middle between external and internal, the board, any of those board committees, the executive committee, the operating committee, the risk committee, what other committees might exist in a board structure that have to be considered or that you might want to have stronger alliances with. And then as we get closer to internally, who is on your leadership team? Who are the sponsors that are driving the work that you do? Who are those affected by, internally, the work you do? And then what is the team? Who's on the team that supports that work as well? Where might you want to bolster alliances? Who's already on your map and who's not? And what categories are missing? Feel free to add them. We can share this with you at the end of COGS if you share your information. So I'll switch to this and I'll explain it in a laser version of this particular table. So which stakeholders are in your alliance? We just asked that question, just looking at a broad stakeholder categories. We can dig as deep as we'd like. This could probably be a 1-hour session, but I'm going to keep it light just for a second and say, name the stakeholder. So we had those categories. Name the person. I'd like you guys to get really granular. Pick one relationship that you would like to build alliance with and define for yourself, what is the interest level of that relationship? So if I say there is a customer that I'd like to pursue, and for that customer, I want them to have high interest in the services that we offer, and their influence level, I want that to be a medium. You could define what you want the influence level to be, because your customer influences how you show up in the market. Or depending if it's an internal customer, if you're dependent on another department for your work to get done, those are your customers. And what is the engagement strategy that you might use to get them on board and to talk to them about building this alliance? So you might gather input. So if I'm saying, hey, I'd like to build stronger alliances with customers, the broad category of customers, how do I do that? Well, maybe I create a focus group and use that focus group to gather information, right? So they get to influence the work that we do. So this table very simply shares different types of engagement strategies depending on the particular category of stakeholder that you're trying to reel in to a relationship or an alliance. So I'll fly by that, but I'll also share this should you be interested. We'll have this available if you feel free to reach out. I'll share my email at the end. But I noticed that we're just about at time. So I'd like to wrap for today. Building alliances is what we talked about. It's what we're focused on today. We know that relationships are currency. So you want to treat relationships in that way. You get out what you put in. And alliances are not friendships in that you can pour into a friend and never get anything back and be okay with it, or a family and never get anything and be okay with it. Alliances are not that. They're currency. They're meant to have deposits and withdrawals, okay? Number 2, alignment beats agreement. So having alliances, when you're deciding who you want to ally with, when you want to be in relationship with, they don't need to be yes people all the time. Elements of difference are actually helpful. In fact, might be even more helpful. Number 3, consistency builds credibility. So those deposits, it's not just one and done. It's consistency because you want to remind your alliances of how they're rich for you and how you're making deposits for them, because that's how you grow towards whatever goal it is that you might be working on. And number 4, stakeholders are strategic relationships that you move about and navigate intentionally. So me showing you a stakeholder map and coming up with strategies to address stakeholder categories, that is being intentional. It's not saying, oh, I generally see John on Tuesdays. Oh, I see him on Tuesdays. I'll say hi next time. Okay. But is John an ally? Is he one of your alliances in an organization? And if so, does he know about it? Right? So being intentional about those relationships and how you're going to pursue them, manage them, nurture them. So as we wrap today, thank you so much for joining. I will be back on April 14th for another episode of Leadership COGS, where we're going to talk about less being more. But in the meantime, don't forget you can catch this session and many others on demand anytime through the app, or if you have any questions, or if you want to map out your stakeholders and begin to invest in your alliance bank more intentionally, feel free to connect with me. We can share the stakeholder matrix with you. You can drop your email in the chat, or you can send it directly to me in the chat so you don't have to put it there publicly. Or you can send a message to team@betterspaces.com. As always, take care and be well.